Hi, welcome to Knits Up. I'm Mindy, your hostess, otherwise known as Knitter CNY. You can find me over on Ravelry and Instagram as Knitter CNY. I live in Syracuse, New York, which is in the middle of New York State, and I live near Oneida Lake, which is named after one of the Iroquois tribes that was here originally. I am working during the week, Monday through Friday. I have weekends off. The company I work for is considered essential services, so that's why I'm going to work. On the weekends, I'm trying to stay in as much as I can because basically, if I don't need to be out, I'm not going to be. I don't want to endanger anybody else's health. So that's what I'm doing. And we're going to talk about my knitting. We're going to talk about my yarn stash, and then we're going to talk about some cheap and entertaining distractions during this if you are home and wondering, okay, what do I do now? I'm sure there's been a whole bunch of stuff that's been posted about educational opportunities for children and all of that, but we'll save that for the end to kind of give you something to look forward to. This week I started a pair of socks on Friday night out of Peyton's Croy in the blue raspberry colorway. This is yarn I bought a while ago when I went to Canada to Listowel, Ontario, and visited the Spinrite factory outlet store during one of their tent sales. I've got a lot of yarn from there. We've talked about this in the past. If you go back to some of the old podcast episodes, I pretty much cover that in detail. It was a lot of fun. It was a trip I made by myself. It sort of is a birthday tradition now that I go someplace for my birthday. One year I went to, like I said, Listowel, Ontario, and Niagara Falls on the Canadian side. The next year I went to Cleveland, Ohio, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and stayed in a hotel there for a couple of days. Then last year, I went to Ticonderoga, New York, which is up in the Adirondacks, a little north of Lake George, and went to Fort Ticonderoga and also to the Star Trek Museum. The short story with the Star Trek Museum is that somebody quite a few years ago decided they were going to do some fan fiction, and they basically recreated the sets from the original Star Trek series. You can look that all up, and I was totally amazed. It was awesome. It was a really weird trip because it was like historical and forward, but also historical. So it was a fun trip. And I've taken all those trips by myself. This year, I don't know what's going to happen because I don't know what's going to happen at the end of May when my birthday is. We could still be doing all of this. And obviously, if we're still doing all of this, there may be travel restrictions in place. There may not be things that are open. Um, there may be just, I don't know what's going to happen I don't know what's going to happen in 2 months. So we'll wait and see. All of these trips were actually all planned at the last minute, so that kind of works out. The only thing I had to pre-plan was going over the Canadian border. I needed an enhanced license from New York State, which is basically what the Real ID concept is. It's a little further information. Like I had to supply my I think my social security card and my birth certificate when I went to apply for it, and it made it so that I could travel over the from New York State to over to the Canadian side over to Canada um, with that type of license without having a passport. It was New York State's alternative to that, I guess. So that's what I have. Obviously, depending on what happens, I may make that trip or I may make some local trip or not take a trip at all and maybe save that up for the year afterwards or whenever this hopefully resolves. So, anyways, that's a lot of information to tell you that I was knitting socks. I am, so I started these. They're the Peyton's Croy Blue Raspberry socks, and they are, um, it's an odd yarn, I guess, for me. Peyton's Croy is usually either striped or like there's the FX yarn that came out quite a few years ago that's sort of uh, barber pole shaded. I don't know how to explain it. This yarn is slightly different because it has solid sections of one color and then it goes into like almost like a speckled section. And so it's different. It's got turquoise, white, a Concord grape purple, and a navy blue in it. So it alternates between the solids and the dappled sections or the speckled sections. Um, like I said, I got this in Canada. So it's sat there for 3 years. It needed to be used. It's pretty spring colors, and that worked out. I had some turquoise reinforcing thread, so I used that in the toe. Unfortunately, I ran out of it, but a sock is a sock, and at this point, I'm not going to try and order turquoise reinforcing thread to make them look alike. They're not going to look alike anyways because the yarn starts at different points and I want to use all of the yarn. I don't want to use just part of it. So I'm not like winding it off and trying to make them exact anyways. They're socks. They're underneath my, they're underneath my pant leg. Nobody's going to really see them unless I'm putting on boots and taking off boots, and that's for about 4 seconds, and nobody really cares if my socks match or not, so I can live with this. I think I have some white reinforcing thread, so I have a more solid section to start the other sock with, so I'm going to use white reinforcing thread, and that'll kind of go with the dappling, so it'll look like it was planned. Like I said, I don't really care. Usually my socks are matchy-matchy, but it's okay. We're going with what we have because that's part of what this year has been anyways, is using stash. I bought very little yarn. I can't see me buying any yarn right now anyways, so I guess I'm stocked up. So I'm knitting these on a US size 1 2.25 millimeter needle, which is a Knitter's Pride Nova Platina. So far, it's given me no problems at all. I'm doing a toe-up sock, and I started with 16 stitches, and then did a knit one, knit in the front and the back, knit across one half of the stitches until I got to the last 2 stitches. I knit in the front and the back of the second to last stitch and then knit the last stitch. Then repeated that on the other side, on the other half of the stitches, and then I'm doing a round of knitting in between, and then you repeat those 2 rows until you get up to the number of stitches that you want, which in my case is 64. So it's kind of a pointy toe, and it's kind of firm because, like I said, I was using reinforcing thread, which is 75% wool and 25% nylon, because I tend to have toes and nails that do bad things to plain wool socks or plain wool and nylon socks without reinforcing thread. So that's why I'm using that. And I will also use reinforcing thread in the heel flap and when I turn the heel. I've always pretty much done that, and it just makes it easier. They last longer. I have some socks that have lasted like 10 years. So I need to rotate some new ones in. The other set of socks that I've been working on are the Peyton's Croy Mexicali stripe socks. And those were on Hiya double points that are kind of short. I think they're like 5 inches a piece, and they're US size 1, 2.25 millimeter. And I thought to myself, why am I torturing myself with this when Magic Loop is so much easier? So I actually went through my needle stash and found a Hiya Sharp 1, 2.25 millimeter. So I transferred those, and it's going a lot easier. I'm on the second sock, and I've got a couple more rounds, and then I'll start the heel flap and turning the heel and gusset and all of that. So I have a lot of books too, and for the toe-up socks, I'm going to be using a heel that has a heel flap and gusset. I think the book is, well, let me get up and look, because it's across the room. It is Socks a la Carte 2 by Janelle Ruffino and Catherine Cade. Cade. I think they're the people behind the Southwest Trading Company with toe footsies, if I remember correctly. So I'm not using toe footsies, obviously. I have a toe footsies in my collection, but it's more of a summer sock kind of yarn to me than a winter sock kind of yarn. And we have a lot of winter and cold weather here in Syracuse. So that's what I'm working on. I have a whole bunch of UFOs. Those are unfinished objects. I've done a few hats for the Hat Not Hate project. I've got more yarn for that, but I kind of felt like I needed to switch it up. So that's what I've been working on this week. And I'll work on again today, because I'm not planning on going anywhere today. Yesterday I went out late in the afternoon, actually about 6 o'clock, and grabbed a few things at our local grocery store, Wegmans, who's been great with trying to keep their associates safe, including they're going to be installing plexiglass around the cashier so they can kind of be more physically separated from the customers, who are paying at the little electronic machine, and they're like a couple feet away, and those people need protection. So that's what I did yesterday. I was in and out of the store in probably 5 minutes and only touched what I was pulling off the shelf to put into my cart. And, of course, grabbed a little squeeze of hand sanitizer on the way out, and, was in and out in 10 minutes. There weren't too many customers, which was what I was trying to avoid, were other customers potentially. Saturday mornings seemed to be very, very busy. And since I only needed a few items, I went in the evening when there would be less customers. So I promised you entertainment tips. I'm going to go through a couple and kind of give you reasons why. So I'm an Amazon Prime member. Just putting it out there. I own an Amazon Fire Stick, and I also own a Google Chromecast, which is another type of streaming device. I have an Android phone. I have a Google Mini, and I have a first generation Amazon Echo. So entertainment value. I also have a recumbent exercise bike that my mom bought probably, well, my mom's been deceased for 14 years, so she probably bought it 16 years ago. Um, so that's been in the house all of that time. So I've been using that for a little bit of exercise on the weekends when I'm not walking around, when I'm not walking around at work. I'm using that for a little bit of exercise on the weekends just because I'm cooped up in the house, and it kind of gives me a little bit of, I'm exercising. Now, granted, it's 15 or 20 minutes a day on the weekends, but that's okay. I'm not really an exerciser type person, but I want to keep my lung function pretty decent, so that's why I'm trying to do that. And plus, it makes me feel a little better, like I've actually done something, and I'm not just sitting around. It keeps my joints active for a little bit of that, kind of like a physical therapy thing. So that's free entertainment. Um, I have been, I have also been using Facebook. Um, Friends and I got together last night and played Pictionary. I had a friend that used Zoom, and you get like a 40-minute meeting, and we all came in and did Pictionary with our phones and laptops at home, with our internet, and kind of got together virtually, and it worked out really well. There's a little bit of a learning curve with it, but not much. I was actually a little prepared because I have a ring light that I purchased last year for like $16 from Amazon that I could clamp to the edge of a little folding TV tray table. And then, it has a little phone mount in it. So I didn't have to sit there and hold my phone or anything. And it didn't really, the lighting was pretty decent because we were doing this at like 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. And it was kind of nice to get together with everybody. I live by myself, and so the only people I've been seeing are people at work. So that was a little crazy. The neighbor down the road was super nice, and I've known her all my life. And she called and said, I bought pizzas for a lot of the neighborhood from the local pizza joint. I'll come to your house and I'll leave it on your doorstep. And, she came with her vinyl gloved hand and left it on my front steps, and I kind of spoke to her through a window, and we were socially distanced when I did that, and said, thank you very much, how's things going? You got supplies? Everything's good. So that was kind of nice. I am in a pretty quiet neighborhood anyways, so that's good. I am watching a lot of television. I'm also listening to audiobooks and doing some reading. If you have, excuse me, if you're listening to this on either a laptop or a phone, check your local library system. If you have a library card and a PIN number, there's 2 apps that our local library system uses. One is called Libby, Libby. The other one is called Hoopla, which is Hoopla. Download those. If you have your library card and your PIN, you can get out stuff digitally from your library system. There's another one that's called Overdrive, Overdrive, that your library system may also use. Check their website, and usually, I don't know about any place else, our libraries are closed here. Because of the coronavirus, they can't guarantee that they can effectively disinfect everything. Obviously, books are more difficult to disinfect than something else. So they've actually told all of our patrons, at least in the 3 libraries around me that are their own library district, to maintain their materials at home. Do not return them because they've closed the branches. And they've said, we're not going to fine you because obviously this is an extraordinary circumstance, but they want you to be able to get stuff out digitally, which is really nice in this case because you'll have access to video, audiobooks, ebooks, and magazines as well. There are a ton of knitting resources. If you're looking for like a pattern for something or fiction or a book or something along those lines, take advantage of those. For me, it's a free resource. I actually have a line on my tax bill that is for the library district, and I pay a certain amount per year. It's not a whole lot for what the use I'm getting for it, especially now. I've downloaded a couple of things and listened to a couple of things. The other thing that I'm using is the Amazon Fire Stick. As an Amazon Prime member, I can get access to Prime Video. There's a lot of free things there, like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I watched a few episodes of that. And there's a bunch of other shows on there. If you're a Neil Gaiman fan, the guy that wrote American Gods, there's a show called Good Omens that's on there with David Tennant from Doctor Who. I think there was like six or seven episodes. I can't remember which. And it was really well written. A different sort of thing. If you're conservatively religious, I would not recommend it for you. If you're open to irreverent humor, then go for it. But if you're conservative religiously, I would not recommend it for you because you will be offended by the content to start with. I chose to look at it as it's a humorous diversion, and I watched this before the whole pandemic thing started, so that may affect my view if I went back to watch it now. The other app that is within Amazon, and it's also available for just Android and iPhones as well, is called Pluto TV. Pluto TV. It's owned by Viacom, which owns CBS. They have this streaming channels with commercials. It has news, it has weather, it has old programs. There's a lot of content that it has. Now, you do have to put up with the commercials, but I'm more than willing to do that because I grew up with commercials, so I know what those are. There's the two things that I watch a lot are there's a classic Doctor Who channel. Think Tom Baker. We're talking like before it ended in the 90s. That's what they consider classic Doctor Who. So, John Pertwee, Peter Davidson, Sylvester McCoy, I believe is his last name. All the classic Doctor Who's. So I grew up with Tom Baker. I really love those episodes because they're just, the whole scarf, it's full of kitsch, aliens who are, in bubble wrap, spray painted green or something like that. They worked with what they had. I tend to not like the 90s stuff because or the late 80s stuff, I just look at it and just go, okay, we're trying to be overly dramatic here and it doesn't work for me. I liked it back when it was more campy. Let's put it that way. So, and the other channel that's out now is the 007 channel, which has old movies. I think it's Sean Connery, Roger Moore, There might be a Timothy Dalton or two movie thrown in there, and then Lazenby for on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I grew up on those movies. I've watched them a million times. It's more of one of those things I can put it on in the background, and I know what the plot is, so I can it's kind of like background noise for me. There's also a whole bunch of other channels. I was watching there's like a CBS News network that's on there. If you want to catch up on the news, any time of day. There's old MTV shows. I was never into that sort of thing, but there's old ones of that if you want to go back and watch those. There's one channel that plays like McCloud's Daughter. There's a classic sci-fi channel that will play stuff like The Prisoner, Space 1999. And last night I found, okay, so you can tell I'm a science fiction fan. So I found Space 1999 about 2 years ago. We have a local channel that's sort of regional. It's called Comet TV, Comet TV. You can also watch it streaming if you want to on your phone or whatever. They run a lot of the old Stargate shows. They run Babylon 5. They run like B movies, some movies from like the 80s and the 90s. It's an arrangement with Sinclair Broadcasting. So I happen to have some Sinclair stations in Syracuse. So they run this in conjunction. I think it's with Sony, maybe. I can't remember who the other company is that runs it. So it's been on for a few years, and so that at one point, and they may still do it, they ran Space 1999 with Walter Matthau and Barbara Bain. You'll remember Walter Matthau and Barbara Bain from Mission Impossible. They were married to each other. Barbara Bain is still alive. I believe she's 87 years old now. God bless her. Because this show was different. The first season was really, really good. The second season was more action-packed. I think they brought in Fred Friedberg. Can't remember his last name, from Star Trek, who was like trying to make it more hip and stuff, and it was just not the same show. The first season is very introspective and very 60s, 70-ish, like funky music, weird paranormal stuff, weird aliens. It's definitely interesting. But anyways, I watched that show, and the couple that did that show had also done the Thunderbirds, which you've probably seen with the Marionettes, the Andersons. And then they did this other show that's called UFO. And I found this on Prime Video last night, so I started rewatching it. I'd watched a whole bunch of episodes on YouTube at one point when they were available, or used the Wayback Machine or something to find these things. And now I find it's on Prime Video for free. So I watched the first couple episodes, and I'm going to go through those. I think there was like one season of that. It's very 60s. It's very mod. It's very, it's funny, but I guess it was supposed to be a kid's show. But at the same time, they deal with a lot of adult subject matter in a very 60s sort of way. And just the costumes alone are well worth it just to watch it. It's, the special effects are not very special, but it's interesting. It's interesting. You can see the kind of photography that was done for the Thunderbirds is the kind of photography that's done for the, the scenes with scale and stuff like that. So that's pretty fun. I'm also, with that, you can also watch YouTube there. You can probably watch YouTube on your phone too, but The YouTube app on the Fire Stick does that. I got a Chromecast originally because it was on sale one Christmas for like $25, and that enables me to stream off of my phone as well. So I can do, I belong to Blueprint, which is Craftsy. I own a bunch of classes from Craftsy because I would go buy them when they were on sale. Um, Blueprint is really good if you want knitting content that's an entire subject. Um, the interaction is not as much as it used to be when it was Craftsy. There was a whole big hullabaloo when um, NBC Universal bought Craftsy and changed it over to be a subscription service. They let all the subscribers who had who weren't subscribers who just bought forever classes keep their classes because that's what we were promised when we bought the classes. And then what they do is it's here, have a subscription service and you'll get a coupon for a free class, like every month or something like that. So I have a bunch of those. So there's going to be other classes coming out. I just looked the other day, and Laura Nelkin, who has a couple of a class or two on Craftsy already, I believe is coming out with a new class soon. And I'm sorry, it slips my mind right now what it is. She's based out of the Ithaca, New York area, I believe. Ithaca, Trumansburg area, because a lot of her patterns are that area. There's a lot of gorges, there's waterfalls, there's country. Cornell University is there, Ithaca College is there. I'm familiar with that area because I went to school at Cortland, State University of New York at Cortland, which is about half an hour away. So I'm very familiar with that area, and my family is actually from the southern tier of New York, the Binghamton area. So uh, I'm very familiar with Ithaca and that area, and I have some people that live in the Finger Lakes in my family too. So I'm used to that area. Um, it's a beautiful, beautiful area. But a lot of her shots are outside, with the beautiful scenery and the hills and waterfalls and, just the beauty of that area. But she designs shawls. She's done kits for stuff. She does jewelry design with knitting. She's been a designer for a long time. Um, she's very precise in what she does. She's a very good teacher. I would highly recommend. I've only taken video classes from her, but I think there's a class that she did for shawl knitting that was fabulous. I did the Skywalker shawl I want to say was one of the patterns that I did. So you can kind of go back and look at that. But Blueprint, Craftsy is a good way if you have the funds to do that. If you don't, then YouTube is a great resource. If you're if you have a pattern in front of you and like, what do I do? How do I do this? If you crochet, I would look at the Crochet Crowd. They're from Canada. They do yarn inspirations type stuff. And if you knit and crochet, I would look at Marley Bird. She's a designer, and she's the national spokesperson for Red Heart, which is now owned by Yarn Inspirations. Also for crochet, there's somebody that I found a few months ago who's been doing this for a long, 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 long time, and nobody pays her to do it. She may make money from the advertising that rolls in her programs, but her name is Bag O Day Crochet. You will find her. She has hundreds of tutorials. She has yarn shopping trips. She has, yarn reviews, all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of content there. I would recommend her because she does not If she gets yarn from yarn companies, it's because they were nice and just sent it to her. She doesn't ask for free yarn. She doesn't have affiliate links or anything like that. Um, and she's um, really interesting because she's just very real. Um, and right now, I gotta tell you, those yarn shopping trips are fabulous to look at because I can't go in a yarn shop right now. Um, I don't know if you're in the same boat and you want to go see somebody shopping for yarn. Who thought that would be totally amazing to look at and kind of distract you to go, oh, look, she's buying yarn. I can't go to the store and buy yarn, except maybe at Walmart, you know? And it's kind of cool to see because it's pretty amazing. Um, it's kind of surreal at the same time, but she's really a good resource. I would highly recommend her. And then there's another lady who's called Cinnamon Stitches. She designs, she has yarn, um, she likes Premier Yarn. And then there's another lady, Creative Grandma, that does some yarn reviews and stuff. She is an interesting person. Different strokes for different folks. I saw her stuff. I think she's very good at explaining things. I don't like her podcast as much as I like Cinnamon Stitches and Bag a Day for crochet type stuff. Um, the Knit Girls, the Grocery Girls, Smells Like Yarn. These are podcasts I watch regularly for knitting content. Really good video podcasts, have been around for a long time and really interesting, very real. So I'm trying to do my little bit by giving you a distraction. This is way longer than I thought it was going to be. And at this point, I'm kind of just babbling. Um, I'm going to talk about my yarn stash for a couple of minutes. Um, like I said, right now I'm not buying yarn. Last summer, before all of this stash down 2020 and using your stash, pandemic, can't go yarn shopping kind of thing happened. Last summer, I got this really strong urge that I needed to document everything that was in my stash. I was one of the first 1,000 people on Ravelry um, when it was still a beta site and they were doing by invitation only back in the day. And so I documented my stash, I think at that point, and then it sort of languished for quite a while. There were, other things that came in, and I really didn't know what I had. So last year, what I did in the summertime was, take out yarn, take a picture, find out how many skeins I had, upload it to. What I would do was I uploaded all the pictures to Instagram. There was a few solid weeks there where I was like, all you're going to see is yarn from my stash. That's all you're going to see. So that's what I uploaded to Instagram because it's easier for me to then upload those pictures to Ravelry. And then I would fill in the details at Ravelry. And I would do, a box a day or a bag a day or something like that where I was going through stuff. So now I know what I have. I can look up what I have. And I have quite an extensive yarn stash. Not like walls and walls of yarn, but I've got enough. I've got bins and bins of yarn and fiber. So I have given some of that away in the past. Like I cleared a whole bunch of stuff last summer and gave a garbage bag of yarn to somebody that I knew from my knitting guild who I said, you want to stash yarn? This is stuff I'm never going to use. And I brought it over to her house and left it there. And she was happy as pie. It's just one of those things where it was like, this is too much. I'm totally overwhelmed. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to clean some of this out. So that's what I did. So all the rest of my yarn is organized in a few bins, and then some under the bed um, clothing blanket bags that I bought at Walmart last summer for cheap. I think they were like $3 a piece or something, but they're see-through at the top so I can see what's in them. But all of my yarn is protected basically. I don't want to leave my yarn out because I don't want to dust it. I don't want to like have stuff on it. It just makes me shudder when I think about it. So I have everything from I have a whole box of sock weight yarn. I have a bunch of color changing yarn like the cakes. I have a bunch of Bernat blanket. I have a bunch of um, worsted weight wool. I have yarn that I bought at an auction a year ago, February, when somebody that I know posted and said, there's all this yarn that's going on sale at an auction. What? Okay. So my friend and I went, and there was, I bought $200 worth of yarn because I felt like I needed $200 worth of yarn. But I have enough yarn for 2 full sweaters for me, and then probably, well, okay, let's say 4 full sweaters for me because I have 2 bags of Plymouth Encore. I have 1 bag of Galway wool, and I have way more Peyton's Norspun yarn to make a colorwork sweater out of. And their colors I all like. I picked sweater weights because I thought that was easier than trying to pick individual skeins and being all weird and stuff like that. That's what worked for me. I wanted a bunch of yarn all in one color, or yarns across colors so I could do color work, and that was good. So I do not, and then I bought chunky weight yarn on sale either from Ollie's discount, or Michael's had a super sale a couple of years ago where it was the Madrid, I think is what it is. No, sorry, Barcelona. The chunky weight acrylic that has color changing sort of barber poles. And they had what they call the Epic pack or something. I think there was like 8 skeins, one each of 8 different colors, and a size J bamboo crochet hook. Originally, this was like $80 or $90, and the whole thing came as a pack in a, of like a vinyl tote kind of thing, a little vinyl bag. And I was like, okay, no. And then one Christmas, Thanksgiving, it must have been a Thanksgiving Black Friday special, they put on sale for $15 or $16. And even with the shipping, it was a good deal. So I've got all this stuff, and the colors are related to each other. I could probably make an Afghan, or they have a bunch of projects on it. And it's really pretty. And I've got this stuff, so I'll use it. So that's about all I've been working on. So I'm set for yarn. I don't have to go buy yarn. I'm set for materials because I've bought knitting needles. I have crochet hooks. I have gauge, things to measure gauge, and a needle gauge, a couple of needle gauges. So I'm set there. I have markers. I have a yarn bowl that a friend bought me that's bamboo, really nice. So I'm pretty much set for yarn and materials and things like that. So that'll be a good distraction as well. So I've babbled on for about 45 minutes. I hope I haven't made y'all go crazy yet. And I hope that you get through this thing. And as they keep saying in all the commercials and on Facebook, we're all in this together. I just like to be all in this together, knitting and crocheting, because it makes it a little easier. And thank you if you are a healthcare worker, a doctor, nurse, CNA, somebody who's volunteering for that position. your support personnel, your family of those people, your first responder, your military. You're doing your part, even if you're sitting home. So I hope you guys have a great week. I will talk to you next week. God bless you.